Whilst the fall of Bashar al-Assad marks a historic turning point for Syria and the Middle East, the country now faces an uncertain and complex future. Despite the collapse of Assad's regime ending more than 5 decades of autocratic rule by the Assad family, the rapid offensive that toppled it has left a fragile and fractured political and social landscape. The rebel forces, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, and allied factions such as the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army, are now in control of much of the country. HTS has promised inclusivity and a nationalist agenda under the leadership of Abu Mohammad al-Jolani. Speaking to rebels, he said the victory was a turning point for the region, and his group pledged to protect minorities and work toward a diplomatic transition, something it has already been seeing to implement after opposition military commanders left Syria's Sayyida Zainab Shia shrine unharmed. Caretaker Prime Minister Mohammed al-Jalali has offered to extend cooperation to any leadership chosen by the Syrian people, signaling a willingness to ensure a peaceful handover of power. Despite these overtures, the possibility of infighting among rebel factions or reprisals against minorities still looms large, threatening the stability of Syria's fragile transition. The immediate challenge is forming a government capable of uniting Syria's diverse population while addressing the deep scars left by over a decade of war. With millions of displaced people, widespread destruction of infrastructure, and a legacy of mistrust among Syria's ethnic and religious communities, the road ahead is daunting. The fall of Assad is also a major blow to Iran and Russia, two of the regime's most steadfast allies. Iran loses a critical ally in its axis of resistance. For Russia, Assad's collapse signals a diminished role in the Middle East, jeopardizing its strategic bases in the country. Both nations, preoccupied with their own crises, Iran with regional tensions and Russia with the war in Ukraine, were unable to prevent Assad's rapid downfall. Meanwhile, the United States views Assad's departure as a mixed blessing. While it weakens adversaries like Iran and Russia, Washington's 900 troops in Syria now face an uncertain mission as President-elect Donald Trump has signaled a preference to withdraw. Such disengagement could leave a power vacuum, further complicating the transition. The next chapter for Syria hinges on whether it can overcome its divisions and establish a government that represents all Syrians. The possibility of a new democratic era exists, but the country's factions still wield their weapons, and the potential for renewed violence is real.
I was a bit surprised by how quick this happened. I didn't expect that it would only take 10 days from them leaving Idlib and then arriving in Damascus, but that there was a strong regime weakness and that there was a strong weakness of Assad supporters. We could clearly see this, and I think Syria experts knew that something was coming, even though I guess most are also surprised by how dynamic and how fast and how quick this all unfolded. The Jabhat al-Nusra in the past, and especially Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which operates under this name since 2017, 16-17, is more Syria-oriented. It is less transnational. It is less concerned about establishing an Islamic caliphate. It wants to establish an Islamic order, but under the leadership of Abu Mohammad al-Jolani since 2017, it has tried in the northwest region of Idlib, over which it ruled mostly 3.5 to 4 million people. It has tried to assure minorities living there, Christians, other religious minorities, for them to have a role and to not be persecuted. It doesn't mean that there hasn't been violence against opposition. It was an authoritarian rule. It was not a democratic, liberal, secular kind of rule. Certainly not. But it was not the same kind of dictatorship or the same kind of brutal repression that we know in Syria from regime areas, that we have known from ISIS rule, or that we have known from the Turkish occupation of parts of northern Syria. So it is an ambivalent organization.
The fall of Assad is not the end of Syria's challenges, but the beginning of a critical period of transition. The stakes are high, and the choices made now, by both Syrians and the international community will shape the nation's future for generations to come.